yesterday we updated our number guessing game program. And if you remember, the final update that we made on it was so that when the user entered a number that was out of range, it would print a different message that would tell them to enter a number that was in range. So I will go ahead and pull that up so we can really quickly remember what that looked like. So this is what we finished off yesterday. We made it so that when the user entered a number that wasn't in the range between 0 and 100, we had it so that it would print a message that said to enter a number between 0 and 100. But afterwards of doing that, we talked a lot about looping and specifically while loops. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make it so this program right here, instead of ending as soon as they make one guess, it's going to keep repeating over and over and over again until they eventually get the correct answer. How comfortable are you guys feeling with while loops at the moment?
I mean, I still need some practice on it, but you know, I'll get the hang of it soon. I just got comfortable with like 4, but
okay, cool. So we will go over one last while loop before we jump into for loops. Remember the structure of a while loop. How it looks is we start off by saying while, and then in parentheses we have a condition. And then while that condition is true, we're going to execute a series of statements in brackets. So how it works is we say while, then we assess a condition, and while such condition is true, we enter the brackets, do whatever code that we have in here, and then whenever we're finished with all that code and get all the way down to the bottom, we hit the last curly brace and we go all the way back up to the top and we reassess that condition. And if it's true, we do everything inside the braces. And if it's false, we exit and continue on with the code. And we will keep doing that over and over and over again until eventually it is false. So in this program, who can tell me when do we want to stop repeating over and over and over again? When do we want to stop having the user guess a number?
After a guess is 19.
Yeah, after the guess is correct. So that is perfect. So we will start a while loop. Where do you think we should start a while loop actually?
Line 10.
So we'll start with while. And then you said that we want our condition. So this loop is going to continue running while the user number, so the user number is coming from the input, is what?
Does not equal 19.
Perfect. Does not equal. So we do an exclamation mark and an equal sign for not equal. And we'll just assign it to mystery because we actually do have a variable for 19, but assigning it the number 19 would work as well. So now we have started our while loop right here, and we have an open curly brace. So everything that is inside this curly brace to whatever curly brace we decide to put on the other end is going to continue looping over and over and over again. So where do you think we want to put the end curly brace?
Line 21.
All right, let's give that a shot. So now we say that everything in this statement is going to loop over and over and over and over again until or while the user number has guessed a number that's not the mystery number. Okay. And now that we have that code, I'm going to go ahead and save it. And I believe that this code is the one that I have running right now. So I'm going to exit the one that I have up here, and I will recompile because we made some changes. And then I will run the executable. So now we get our prompt. So we're going to guess a number between 0 and 100. And I'll just pick a random number, 34. And who remembers what this is? What did we just do?
Infinite loop.
Yeah, it's an infinite loop. You got it. So just so you guys know, if you ever get yourself in an infinite loop, the way to get out is to press Control-C, and that should get you out of the infinite loop in case that ever happens. So now that we're out of our infinite loop, we know that whatever we just did here has an infinite loop in it. So I told you guys yesterday what creates an infinite loop. So do we remember what that is?
no.
The conditions.
Yeah, you got it. So an infinite loop is created when the condition that we have assigned to the while loop can never, ever, ever be false. And we're gonna have to assess our code a little bit to figure out why. So within our loop body, all we do here is check, is mystery num equal to user num? Is mystery num in this range? Is mystery num in this range? Is mystery num in no ranges? The problem is our condition can never be updated. We don't update the variables, user num or mystery, within the loop body. So since there's no updating happening, we have gotten ourselves into an infinite loop because the condition will always, always, always be true. We just need to make sure that our condition here is updating inside of the loop. So this can be adding another statement into the loop that updates one of these variables, or it can be moving the where the loop is in the program, what it includes. So what do you guys think we want to do here?
Move the while loop.
Okay. All right, let's move the while condition. And I have this copied. Where do we want to paste it? Well, we can see on line 9 and line 8, we're taking input for a variable called usernum. And if I put this back, usernum was a part of our condition. So if we were to include this input stuff in our while loop, that would successfully update usernum inside the loop. And then when we do that, we will 1, get out of an infinite loop, and 2, every single time that we run this loop, we will also reprompt the user to enter another number, which sounds like a good idea for our little game here. We want every single time that we loop around that they're going to enter another guess. And the statements which allow them to enter another guess are right here. And now they are inside the loop body. So if we compile, and we got no errors, so that's good. And we run again. Okay, we have our little prompt here. Our while loop did not mess up with that, so that is fantastic. And if we enter a number, it's telling me that it is too high. And look at that, we got another prompt for them to enter another number. So if I say 16, it is too low. And if we get it on the right number, 19, and we also exited the while loop. So this program is absolutely perfect in my opinion. So do you guys have any questions on what we had to do to change it to no longer be an infinite loop, or just anything in general about this?
So basically the username has to update, right?
Yeah, something in this condition for the while loop has to be updated within the loop body. And when I refer to the loop body, you'll probably see this in Zybooks or Steve talking about something called a loop body. What that means is it's all the code that is between the 2 curly braces that start and end the while loop. So all of this stuff is what we call the loop body. And something in that body has to update the conditional statement right here. Otherwise, if there's no update, it's either always going to be true or always going to be false. So when it's always true, that's when you end up in an infinite loop. Did that clarify that at all?
Yeah.
All right, perfect. And for people who have not come to SI before, I'm completely fine with you interrupting me if you ever have any questions, or sending them in chat, whatever works for you. I will keep an eye out for your questions whenever you have them. So in our previous example, if we were to run this again real quick, and I enter 19, I ran the loop 1 time. But in the previous execution of this program, I ran the loop a total of 3 times. And the thing here is, none of you guys or me could ever tell anyone how many times this loop is going to run, because it's all dependent on the user. Depending on what the user enters, depends on how many iterations this loop is going to go through. And when we have a loop like that, where we don't know how many times it's going to need to run, oftentimes we use the while loop. But if we ever have an occasion where we know in advance, I want my loop to run exactly 5 times or exactly 100 times, that is when we use a different type of loop called a for loop. But one thing to note is, I think Steve also mentioned this to you, that the definition of which loop to use can be a little blurred sometimes. We can actually achieve everything that we can in a for loop and a while loop. And I want to show you guys that because you're familiar with a while loop before we jump into the for, because this will connect to that. So I am going to go ahead and close out this document, save and close. And I'm going to open another text editor here. Too many windows. Okay, so we have a text editor. And I'm going to really quickly save this as a CPP file. And I will save it to a file that I have on my desktop. And we're going to really quickly just write the basic code that any C++ code has. So we include IOStream for input and output functionality. And then we say using namespace std. And this also allows for input and output. Then we create our main function. And this is like the box that all of our program is going to go inside. Everything goes in here. And then lastly, we say return 0. And this will just let the compiler know that if it hits this return 0, everything in our program worked as expected. All right, so now we have our very basic structure. What I want you guys to help me with is to write any while loop. I don't care what it is, but just any while loop where it will run a total of 5 times. Every single time we run it, it's always going to run 5 times. What do you think we could do to do that?
Wait, are we still working with while or for loops? Oh.
We are going to do a while loop really quick, and I'll show you how it connects to a for. So this time we're going to do a while loop.
Where we had like 2 sets of conditions.
All right, let's try that out. So we're going to do while. And then what condition? Oh, James got it. That's the structure of a while loop. Perfect. So now we need to set a condition. And what I want you guys to do is in our while loop, I'm going to put a cout statement. And I want you guys to tell me what conditions can I put here that will make this cout statement print to the console 4 times. And you can create as many variables as you want. Do whatever you want here just to get this to print 5 times. And if you don't know, it's totally fine. I will help you out. Okay, so we know in our condition, we're going to need to result in a true or false value. We also know that in the loop body, we are going to have to update whatever condition that we have. And we're going to need to create a condition. All right, let's see what you got here, James. While user num is equal to value. I will go ahead and copy that. While user num is equal to value, we're going to print hello world. Do you think that we're ready to save and run? We could try it. Let's give it a shot. All right, so we have some errors here, and that is because user num has not been defined and value has not been defined. We created some variables, but we have not defined what they are. So we could go ahead and say int value is 3. And what are you thinking user num should be? User num is going to be input, okay? So are you thinking that we will take input inside of this while loop like this? Be in user num and like that. I think that this will run. We can give it a shot. So we'll do recompile. We made some changes and run the executable. Okay, so we never got any output. Does anyone know why?
Because nothing changed inside of the while loop.
Kind of. If we entered the while loop ever, we would have at least seen this cout statement. If nothing changed inside the while loop, we would actually see this cout statement over and over and over and over again, like an infinite loop. What actually happened here is we never even entered the while loop. So all of our output statements in this program exist within the while loop. They're right here. It's just this one cout statement. And this is a little debugging technique. Since we never see the cout statement, we know, like by default, that this while loop never even ran. And when a while loop never even runs, it means that the condition that we set was never true. So what happened here is when we started our program, we assigned value with 3. And then we assigned usernum right here with nothing. And when we assign an int variable with nothing, the compiler kind of just chooses a random value. I'm pretty sure there's like a method to it, but for our purposes, it's just a random, completely unpredictable number. And we have no idea what this is, but it's probably not 3. So when we have our condition that says, is usernum equal to value, is usernum equal to 3, it's probably never going to be true. So since it was false, we never ran the while loop and just exited the program. What do you think we want to do instead? And I could tell you guys this one if you want. This is a little bit of earlier knowledge before we go into the for loop.
Wait, so do we need to assign like something to usernum then?
We could. What do you want to try?
Let's go for 11.
11. All right. And we will save this again and run the executable. Oh, I forgot an equal sign. My bad. That's not where the equal sign goes. It goes right there. Okay, running the executable. We still have no output, and the reason being our condition for the while statement is everything in the body is going to execute when usernum, which has the value of 11 that we just assigned it to, and value has the value of 3. So this is a statement which is saying, if we just ignore the variables for a second, is 11 equal to 3? And this right here results in false. And since it's false, we go from one curly brace to the next and exit the program. So that's why we didn't get any output. All right, James says that we put the cn statement outside the while loop. So I will go ahead and do that. Okay, and I will change this back to not having a value. We compile, no errors. Okay, so we have the cn statement is executing right now, so it's waiting for some input. What input do you think that we should give it? 3. Okay. Looks like we got ourselves into an infinite loop again. So I will get us out of that. And the reason is in our while loop, we never updated the value of either usernum or value. So when we assigned usernum with 3 in this statement, it just said is 3 equal to 3. And that is most definitely true. And since that was true, it's going to execute the statement in here. And then it's going to jump all the way back to the beginning of the while loop, and usernum or value have not changed since the last time. So it's going to assess again, is 3 equal to 3? And that's true. So it's going to print the hello world, and it's going to just keep doing that over and over and over again until we interrupt it. What else do you guys think we could do?
Can you do the +1?
+1 where? You're thinking like usernum? Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll give that a go. We're getting closer. We're getting good stuff with this +1, and we're going to get there, I promise. Okay, so it compiled, and now we run the executable. It's waiting for some input. We said that we were going to enter 3. All right, so this time it ran once, and the reason being, we entered 3 first, then it assessed is 3 equal to 3. It was. Then we printed our cout statement, and then we increased the value of usernum by 1. So we came back up to the top of the while loop to reassess. Usernum was now 4, and that's not equal to value, so we escaped. I'm thinking that a good idea here might be to reassess this condition right here. Instead of having it be equality, what if we tried a range? What if we said that while usernum was maybe less than, greater than or equal to something? That way, we can run more than once or infinite. Usernum is something to 18. Greater than 18 or less than 18? Greater than, okay. And do you think we're ready to run? Sure, okay. And we are going to compile. What number do you want to give the input? 5. Okay, sounds good. So we got no output. Reason being, while 5 is greater than 18, this is always going to be false. We could try entering a bigger number, maybe something that is in fact greater than 18. Maybe like 23. Okay, we're in an infinite loop again. And the reason being, we're saying while usernum is greater than 18, we're going to print hello world. And I gave it 23 on the first execution. And then we said usernum is going to increase by 1 every single time. So we go up to the top of the while loop again, and we're going to check what usernum is now. Now, usernum is 24. 24 is still greater than 18. So then we're going to execute our cout statement. Then we're going to increase usernum again. And then it's going to be 25. And this is going to go on for infinity because usernum will always be greater than 18. The way
Well,
that
when
we've
you
written.
set the conditions in the while loop,
Yeah, I think that we should reassess it again. So I'm giving you guys the hint that it's going to start with usernum. And we're going to either use greater than or less than some number. Okay, usernum is less than 18. Let's give that a run. That is sounding pretty good. Okay, I will give it, you said 5 last time, so I'll do that again. Oh, look at that. We have a not an infinite loop and not nothing. So we are making significant progress here. This is really good. So we have our loop here, and it looks to me like it is running, I want to say 13 times.
yeah, I counted 13.
Yeah, it looks like 13. And the reason being, we have said that usernum is going to be 5. And while 5, our usernum value, is less than 18, we're going to execute the hello world statement. And then we're going to increase usernum's value by 1. So we come up again, it's 6. And then we go down and do all this stuff. And then we come up again, it's 7. We do all this stuff, we come again, it's 8. And we're going to keep doing that until we reach the value of 18 for usernum. So what number do you think we should use instead of 18? 57. And input still being 5. We get a lot more statements here. So I think we want to go lower. 5, there we go. And if we input 5, Smithy, you're on the right track. I just want to let you guys know that if we were to input 5 here, we're not going to get any output. And the reason being, when we enter 5, 5 is not going to be less than 5. However, if we were to enter 0, we have 5 hello world statements. So we have successfully executed this code, and I want to break it down for you what we just did. So the reason why it's finally working is when we have input to usernum, we said that it's going to be 0. And then we said while the value of usernum is less than 5, which is 0. 0 is less than 5. So we're going to execute a hello world statement. So I'll just make a tally here. Then we're going to increase the value of usernum by 1. So now usernum was 0, now it's 1. So we're going to go up to the top again. We're going to say, is 1 less than 5? Yes. We're going to print out another cout statement. We're going to increase the value of usernum. And now we have the value of 2. We're going to check, is 2 less than 5? It is. So we're going to execute the while loop. We have another cout statement here. And then we're going to increase the value of usernum. So now it's 3. We're going to go to the top again. We're going to check, is 3 less than 5? It is. We're going to enter the loop. And then we're going to execute our cout statement. So we have another cout statement here. Then we're going to increase the value of usernum by 1. So now it's 4. Then we're going to go all the way back to the top of the loop. We're going to check, is 4 less than 5? It is. And because it is, we're going to execute our cout statement. So that's another mark on the tally. Then we're going to increase usernum. We get 5. And then we're going to come all the way back up again. And we're going to check, is 5 less than 5? It is in fact not. So we're going to exit the loop and exit the program. So that is why we have our while loop, which does run 5 times. And I want to make one last edit here before we jump into our for loop. And the edit is, instead of taking input, because right now this program here, as you can see, is input dependent. They have to enter a 0 for this to work. If they enter anything but 0, it's not going to run 5 times, as we just saw. It will run 0 times if they enter 5. It will run, let's see, if they enter 3, it's going to run 2 times. So it's very, very user dependent. And what we want to have here is a program which will always, 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 always run 5 times. And what we're going to do is we're going to get rid of the input statement, and we're going to just assign user num with 0. That way, every single time that this program runs, user num is going to be equal to 0. We don't have to worry about user input. And every single time that we run it, we're going to get 5 hello world statements, no matter what. So questions on this. We have just seen that a while loop can accomplish the task when programmed correctly to loop a specific number of times, in our case 5. But you may have noticed that was kind of complicated. It took a lot of steps to do that, and all of our parts of our program are kind of everywhere. We increment here, we have a condition up here, we have to set to 0 up here. It's kind of sporadic all over the program, and it'd be nice if there were a simpler way to do it because it's such a common task. And the good news for everyone in here is there is, and this is called a for loop. So the for loop is going to have all the same parts that we just saw, but it's going to be set up in a much more, I think, logical way of doing it. So a for loop consists of an initial expression. Actually, let me backtrack here. This is what a for loop syntax generally looks like. So we start off with the keyword for. If you remember in our while loop, we started off with the keyword while, and that determined what type of loop we're going to do. This is the same thing. We're going to start off with the keyword for. So now when the compiler sees this word, it knows that it's going to expect a for loop. Then we have this condition. It looks pretty complicated. We have a lot of stuff going on, but I promise it's going to be simplified. So the first part that we have here is an initial expression. It just initializes what we call the counter variable of the loop, and it sets it to a certain number. In this case, 0. Hey, this looks kind of familiar. We have a number that was set to 0 and also an int. That's the same thing. We're setting a certain variable, a counter variable, to 0. That's the first thing we do. Next, we have a conditional expression. So this counter variable that we just created is either less than, greater than, or equal to some sort of value. We have that. We have that right here. We have our counter variable, user num, is less than a certain number. That's all right there. So we got that. Next, we have an update expression. This is I++. What it's doing is it's increasing our counter variable by 1. And guess what? We have that too. We have our counter variable user num is increasing by 1 every single time we loop around here. So this is the syntax of a for loop. And the nice thing is all of that stuff is just contained in one single expression. And once you do a bunch of these, you'll get to know the basic syntax of how to loop a certain number of times. And I'll also tell you what that is. So in addition, we also have curly braces. And in fact, we also have a loop body and everything in the loop body, which is going to execute X number of times. Okay, so now using that information that we just gained, that a for loop is pretty similar to a while loop, what I'm going to have you guys help me out with is we're going to change this loop that we have right here into a for loop. And to help you guys out, I'm going to actually copy this stuff to my desktop so you can see it. Okay, so here is our for loop syntax. Fit it on here. And what we're going to do is we're going to change up our program from a while loop to a for loop. It's going to do the exact same thing. It's going to print hello world 5 times. We just want to use a different type of loop this time. So Can anyone tell me, I'm gonna just erase, actually no, I'm going to comment all this stuff out. So it doesn't affect the code, we can still see it. So we have a blank code here again. What is the first thing I'm gonna write?
4.
Perfect. We're gonna say 4, we're doing a for loop. And then all the conditional stuff goes in parentheses. Okay, so what is the initial expression that I'm gonna write?
Int I equals 0.
Perfect, I equals 0. And when we do a for loop, we generally use a variable called I. And this is nothing special. You'll see it a lot in Zybooks when you get to the for loop section. And you also see Steve using it. You'll see me using it. Whenever we do a for loop, we use generally the counter variable is called I. And this stands for index. It's nothing fancy. It's just a regular variable. It's kind of just convention at this point. So we say I equals 0. Perfect. So what's our conditional expression going to be? This part.
I is less than 5.
Perfect. I is less than 5. And lastly,
I plus plus.
I plus plus. Perfect. And then, wrong type of braces. Our loop body, we're going to see out hello world. And now that's it. That is the entire for loop. It looks a lot cleaner and I think it's a lot easier to read. So I'm going to go ahead and compile, so no errors. And as you can see, there it is, absolutely identical. 5 hello world statements and 5 hello world statements from the previous program. A hint for whenever you're writing a for loop, if you want it to run X number of times, the basic syntax is I is going to start equaling with 0. Then you'll say I is less than a value being the number that you want the number of times you want the program to loop. So if I switch this 5 out for a 10 and I saved it and I recompiled and reran, it's going to loop 10 times. And you could count it if you want, but I can guarantee you that this is 10. We can see 5 and we can see 5. And if I were to do this 100 times and save it, it printed hello world 100 times. I'm not going to count that, but I can pretty much guarantee you that that is 100 loops. So do you guys have any questions on this for loop so far? Yay, I'm glad to hear that. Hopefully that was a bit more clear than the while example. I just wanted to show you guys all the different parts, how it all comes together in the for loop. There we go. So that is the for loop, and you have these slides if you ever need to come back to the basic structure of them, along with the explanation of what all the parts are. Then that was our while example. So difference between a for and a while loop. We just saw that a while loop can do the same stuff as a for loop, but often if we want to loop a specific number of times that we know in advance, we're going to probably go for the for loop because it's a lot cleaner and easier to read. But if we want to have a loop that loops an indefinite number of times, meaning we don't know how many times it's going to loop before we run this program, it's probably going to be user dependent, then we're going to use a while loop. And we saw how that worked in our mystery number guessing game. Okay, so next, this is just explaining why we use I think I already did that. So now we're going to do another programming activity. I'm having a lot of activities for you guys today. The next one that we're going to do is we are going to write a program, and it's going to take user input for an integer value. Then we are going to use the loops that we just learned about, and we are going to count down from that number that the user entered. So it'll just be 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we will print all of those on their own line. And if the user entered 6, it will be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If the user entered 3, 3, 2, 1, just like that. So I think that we can actually build off of, nope, that's not what I wanted to do. The last example that we have here. So we have a for loop structure. Actually, before I start talking, what do you guys think we want to do for this? Okay, let's start off with the very first instruction. And the very first instruction was we're going to get input from the user. So this is, and I also said that it is an integer value. So we know we're going to create an int variable, and I will call this input. And we are going to make it an int because I said we're going to take input for an int. Next, we're going to do an input prompt. The prompt is going to be asking the user to enter some input. So I'll say enter a number. Next, we are going to take input for said number. So you guys know this is a CN statement. I'm just getting through this because we have a bit of experience with this. Okay, so now we have completed the first step. First step was to take input. The next step is we're going to use whatever number that the user entered, and we are going to count down from that number. So if they entered a 5, we'll print 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If they entered 6, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How do you think I could do that?
Change the 100 to the number you want.
Perfect. So we changed 100 to the number that we are going to start counting from.
And then the I plus plus change to I minus minus.
Good, because instead of counting up, we're counting down. And we also want to output, instead of hello world, the numbers counting down. So in our loop here, what is changing?
The input or
Okay, let's try that. It's out input. And we'll put an end line. Okay, and 1 semicolon. So I will compile. So we got no errors back. And if we run, enter number, I'll say 5. We have another infinite loop. And yes, it is possible to make an infinite loop with a for loop, unfortunately. And I will get ourselves out of that. And the reason is we entered a 5 and we said I is going to be 0. And while 0 is less than 5, we're going to output this stuff. Then we're going to come back up here and we're going to minus 1 from 0. So that's going to be -1. And we check our conditional statement again. And we're going to say, is -1 less than 5? Well, yes. So it's going to keep going over and over and over and over again until forever. We're close here. We just have a few things to change. I can tell you that the I minus minus is correct. What else do we want to change?
Would we have to change I?
Okay, what would we want to change I to?
Maybe 1?
I to 1. All right. So we will save, compile. And if we enter 5, we are still in an infinite loop. So I'm going to tell you, this is the starting point. Whatever we assign to I is going to be whatever number we want to start from. And this condition represents the stopping point in a for loop. This is always start, whatever we want to start from. And whatever condition we put here is going to represent the stopping point. And this is going to represent how we're going to get there.
would
So,
be equal or greater.
Like this. We can give that a go.
No, like the greater and equal sign.
Like this. Nope.
Yeah.
Greater than or equal to. That was correct. Okay. Doesn't look like that's going to be it, but good try. Let's switch back to, instead of counting down, because counting down is a little bit more difficult, we'll just go back to counting up. So for our basic for loop, we're going to just do this. We're going to do this guy again. So we said our basic for loop, when we want to run X number of times, or val number of times, we said that our first part is going to be I is going to start at 0. Then we said that our condition is going to be when I is less than the number of times that we want to run. So we'll put that in. Say I is less than input. Input is how many times we want to run. And then we said I plus plus. So everybody good with this so far? Okay, cool. So I will save this code and run it. What did it do? Oh, I'm missing a parenthesis. And we enter number, 5. We're getting closer. So we see 5 printing out 5 times. And this matches up with our program because what we assigned to input was 5. And what we're printing out is the value of input. And if you notice, we never make any changes to input in our loop. So it makes perfect sense that it should stay 5. I'm going to ask you guys, what in this loop is changing? What is making this stop eventually?
0.
0? The 0 is a constant. 0 is staying the same. Asking like what variable is actually being affected and changing?
The input.
Input we just saw is going to stay constant. Input's 5. What else do we have in this loop?
Would it be I?
Yeah, you got it. It's going to be I. Because in our loop, we're saying that I is starting at 0. And then every single time we loop around, every iteration, we're going to hit this I++ operator. And if you remember what it does, is it changes the value of I, increasing it by 1 every single time. So every single time we loop around, we should expect to see a new value of I. So if we were to save this, what it's going to do, instead of printing out what input is after every single loop, it's going to print out what I is. And we know that I should change. So if we say 5, we got 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is the value of I every single time that we loop around. So now we've successfully counted up almost to 5, not quite. We usually start loops at 0 because in this whole expression here, it just makes a lot of sense to be able to put whatever number that you want the loop to run over here in this I is less than this number statement. But if we started I at 1 and we saved it, yeah, in programming, a lot of times things count from 0. So I doesn't have to start at 0. It's just kind of convention. It makes it easier to read. But if we were to start it at 1, notice what we do. Now we count 1, 2, 3, 4. All it's doing is printing out the value of I every single time. So how could I do it so it includes the 5 now?
Put an equal sign.
Yeah, there you go. It's going to allow for the equivalency to 5. So now when we run, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That sounds good. We did it. We counted up. We were going to try and count down. Counting down might be a little bit confusing at the moment. Do you want to try counting down or do you want to try something else?
If we were to count down, do we just change the what I equals to and then start from there and then have the I minus minus?
Pretty much, yeah. You know what? Let's try it. So if we look at our program here and we look at the output, it started whatever I was assigned to. We had I assigned to 0. The first number it printed out was 0. We said I is assigned to 1. First number it printed out was 1. And this is going to continue. If we assigned I with 3, it's going to print less times because the condition changed. But if we enter 5, it's going to start at 3. So in the example program that we have right here, we started counting down from 5, which also happens to be the number that the user entered. So what do you think I should assign to I to make it count down?
10.
10. All right, we'll assign I with 10. And then when we're counting down, Ventura, you mentioned that we want to use I minus minus, and you're absolutely correct because I++, what it does is every single loop, we're going to increase the value of I by 1. In this case, we're counting down. So we want to go 5 down to 4, down to 3. So we're going to use minus minus. Last time we're counting up, so we use plus plus. This time we're going to count down, so we're going to use minus minus. All right, last thing we have to change is this conditional statement right here. What do you think we want to do to that?
Input is less than 0.
Is less than 0.
No, greater than 0, sorry.
Greater than 0. Okay. And we will save. And I am going to file. Okay. So we are successfully counting downwards. At least we can see that, right? we are getting bigger and bigger negative numbers. So that's down. So that's good. We got that. But we did
Does he-
enter an infinite loop.
The CL has to be input also.
Okay, we can try that. Okay, so now we are in an infinite loop, but we are just seeing out the 5 because I entered 5 and it's going to take input and 5 is going to go and get stored in input. We didn't change 5 at all. So it's going to just continue printing the original value of input. So let's escape this. Hello. There we go. Okay, so I think we were good with I because when we did I, we saw numbers changing. They were going down. So we were getting there. In our conditional expression, we always want it to refer to I because I decreasing is what's going to help us eventually stop. So it's going to assess for I every single time. If we're decreasing I, but never using that decreasing method to compare it to anything, it's never going to stop because the conditional expression is just like this in the while loop. This determines when we stop, determines if the loop is going to run. And in this conditional expression, remember when I told you in the while loop, we had to update the conditional expression to avoid an infinite loop? The same thing here. The conditional expression part has to get updated. So if I is the thing being updated, I has to be a part of the condition. So if we say, well, I is greater than 0, we start I at 10, and we're going to continue looping while I is greater than 0, and every single looping decreased by 1. How does that sound to you guys?
I think that's gonna work.
All right, let's try it. So we say compile, executable, I'll enter 5. All right, we're getting there. We are counting down from 10 all the way to 1. So we have 1 counted down, 2 avoided an infinite loop. So this is really, really good progress. Why do you think we're starting from 10?
We need to
Because
change I, right, to 5 at the beginning.
Right here?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll change that to 5. And I will save and compile. So if I entered 5, there we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So this is really, really good. Great job. Now, when we write a program, it's good to test it with multiple inputs because there are some cases when you have a program which will work fantastic for one input, and then if you try another, it will not work. So this is also a good tip for your assignment that I believe is due tomorrow, I think. Pretty positive it's due tomorrow. Test it with the test conditions that Steve gave you, because if one works, it doesn't mean that all of them will. So be sure to test all of them. So we're going to do that for our program here too. So if I tested it with 15, so the number that we were supposed to enter, the program was going to count down from it. It was going to go 15, 14, 13. So if we enter, it is set counting down from 5. No matter what number I enter in here, it's always going to count down from 5. Well, it was counting down from 10 when I was initialized at 10. It's counting down from 5 when I is initialized to 5. So what do you think we want to initialize I to instead?
Input.
Perfect. So whatever we initialize I to in this expression is what it's going to start counting down from. And we saw that happen. So if I save and compile. Okay, so now we're going to enter 5 because we know that worked. Okay, cool. We still have 5. We enter 10, counting down from 10. And if we do some crazy number like 100, we are counting down from 100. So you did it. Good job. Any questions on this? It might take some practice. It's going to take a little bit to get the syntax of this memorized, and definitely practice this a lot if you can. Just try and write some for loops. Do whatever you want, like say, I'm going to make this for loop run 10 times. Just give yourself that goal. And then try to create a for loop that will run 10 times. And if you do it, great. If not, you can message me and I'll be happy to help you guys if you have any problems with your for loops or anything at all. We could do one of 3 things. So And we can also do this stuff next week. This is a programming activity that they actually use on programming job interviews. And the good news for you guys is you know everything that you need to know to write this program. So in a programming job interview, they will tell the interviewee that they need to write a short program that prints numbers from 1 to 100. Well, guess what? We pretty much just did that when we did our counting up program. We were able to count from 1 to whatever number that we set it to. This one's counting down, but we did a counting up program earlier, and I'll send that to you guys. But we count down from a single number, but there is a twist to this. If the number that we are about to print is a multiple of 3, instead of printing the number, we print the word fizz. If the number is a multiple of 5, we print the word buzz. And if it's a multiple of both 3 and 5, we print fizz buzz instead. And this goes all the way to 100. So you guys want to try this out? It's actually an official thing that they use on interviews, so might be good to know. Let's do it. Okay, sounds good. So I am going to make a new document here, and I'll save it as a CPP file. So we get our syntax highlighting. All right, so we are all set, and I'm going to help you guys help me program this all the way from scratch. So what is the first thing that I need to write here?
The hashtag include IO stream.
Perfect. Yeah, James, I don't think we will be able to finish it. We can start it and finish it next week. And then we do using namespace, std. Okay, what's the next thing?
You put int main.
Perfect, int main. And the last part of the structure is?
Return 0.
Perfect. You got that down. Good job. Return 0. Okay, so now we want to write a program that is going to loop from 1 to 100. So just ignore the rest of this part. How are we going to write a loop that loops 100 times?
Use a for loop.
Perfect. So for, what is I going to start at? We're counting up this time. We did that way up there. I'm not going to scroll, but
0.
it was the basic for loop 1.
Would it be 1?
Yeah, you got it. I is going to start at 1 because whatever we initialize I to is going to be the first number that we print. We saw that happen when we printed up and we printed down. So we'll initialize I to 1. Okay. What's the condition going to be?
Would it be like I is less than or
Less
equal
than?
to 100? Or
Perfect. Yeah, you got it.
we would have to
Nailed it.
declare
Good
that
job.
variable though, right?
What?
We would have to, could we declare 100 as like a variable?
We could say int num is equal to 100 if you like that better. And then we could switch 100 out with num. Either way works. Both of them are totally fine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so now I think this is the last thing we're going to do. We're just get the structure done. We'll do the rest next week. We're counting up. So do we want to increment I upwards or downwards?
Upwards.
Perfect. So we're going to do I plus plus. And now I plus plus. And now inside of our for loop, we want to output just the numbers increasing. So what do I want to print?
So would we do like character out and I?
Perfect. You got it. So this is what we're going to do for this program for today. Next week, we will make it so it is printing the fizz and the fizz buzz and all that stuff. And I'll show you how to do that. But for now, just to verify, please tell me I'm in the right directory. Fizz. Okay, there we go. There we go. We did it. So we got from 1 to 100. And next week, we will talk about how to swap out those numbers. And one last thing before you guys head out, I know you have class. There are some additional programming problems on the second to last slide. If you want to do some of those, have some instructions, if you want to get some extra practice. And in addition, these are the zybook sections that cover loops if you want any extra practice on that. So yeah, that's all I have for you guys today. I will see you in class, and thank you so much for joining.
Thanks, Steph.
Thank you.